Hello, my name is Mike Cook. I review books, films, theatre, etc. for two Shul magazines, and I'd like to introduce Jonathan Nicholas. After I read his book, Kibbutz Virgin, I was so blown away with it that I contacted Jonathan. And to cut a long story short, Jonathan agreed to do this Zoom with me. But then events overtook us because when he discovered that I live in South Devon, and he'd be visiting South Devon to see his son in a few days' time. So he actually agreed to meet in person beforehand. And we met in a Topsham pub a few days ago and have now become already acquainted. Anyway, enough from me. Jonathan, please tell us about the catalyst for writing this book and what it's about.
Right. Hi, Mike. Nice to see you again. Yes, first of all, thank you for being blown away by reading one of my books. That's a huge compliment. That's brilliant because it started when I was in the loft. As it says in the book, we came back from the pub once and the carbon monoxide detector was going off. So we had to get a new boiler. And when the boiler man was in the loft, I found my diary from 1978. And unbelievably now, on reflection, it was for an 18-year-old, it was an A4 diary. And I wrote a page a day when I was at Kibbutz Daphna in 1978, from November 78 until May 79. And it included everything I did, including what I had for breakfast, who I sat with at breakfast, what we had for lunch, what the work was like, everything. And I was so blown away. I was sat in the loft with my torch for an hour, and I think my wife probably thought I died up there. She says, "What are you doing up there?" And I said,
You didn't even bring it down to read. You had to read it while you were up there.
No, not at first. I was so blown away with finding this thing, and I thought, when you find something you think's been lost for years, and there it was. And so I thought, there's a book in this. This would make an excellent book, because I'd already started writing. I'd written 2 books before then, I think. And I was on the lookout for something else. And so it wasn't that difficult to transcribe it into a book form,
No. And I like the way that it's not actually written in a diary form with a date on every page, and we don't know what you had for breakfast every day, but there's a few key dates that you've mentioned in the text, but it's not in a diary format. It's in a, I don't know what you call it, autobiographies format.
Yeah, and it's written through the eyes of that 18-year-old.
Yes, and that's very evident when you read this. Yes.
Yeah, and the people who've read it have said that's quite sweet. It's a nice way to see Israel and the country as a completely blank canvas, because I knew nothing of it before I went, and so I was free to write whatever I wanted. And it's interesting how people see what I've written from an innocent, naive young 18-year-old lad from Sheffield who knew nothing about the place, to suddenly be dropped in there and eventually find out that I loved the place, from initially being really fearful and saying, what the hell am I doing here? Because I was put to work, first night I was there, I was put to work in a factory pulling Wellington boots out of hot molds. And I'd never worked a night shift before. I'd only ever done a paper round. So it was a real shock. But it's just something about the kibbutz life. If any of you read been on a kibbutz, they'll understand how amazing it is. No money changing hands, and it's all working for the.
You're looked after, and you're guaranteed to be looked after all the time.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a superb way of life, really. It's such a shame that a lot of them have gone.
Yes, indeed. So just going post-book, if that's the right word, when I found out about, I think it was your second visit there, and you wanted to go to a kibbutz. You were originally in Kibbutz Daphna, right up in the far north, and you wanted to go to the opposite end of the country, to the south. And when I read, I just had such a shock, and a shiver went through me, because you found yourself in Kibbutz Be'eri, which of course for not very good reasons, is now internationally known.
Yeah.
What
It was, yeah.
Kibbutz Be'eri like then, and what were the people there like?
Oh, it was, and probably still is, a beautiful place full of lovely people. It was a Shangri-La, really. Everybody was so nice. And in fact, I went back to Be'eri. I had 2 6-month stints there. And it tells you what sort of people they are, because the second time I went back to Be'eri, I never even asked if I could come back. I just turned up one day and I bumped into one of the kibbutzniks, and he just said, "Hey, Nick, manishma, you want to stay with us?" And I said, "Yeah, well, yeah, if that's okay." And he said, "Well, of course, because your reputation is if you work hard, then you're welcome."
You were the dishwasher expert.
I did the dishwasher for a while, but that was mainly at Daphne. But at Be'eri, we had the pardes, and I preferred to be outside picking the oranges.
Right.
But when I joined the police in 1984 in Nottingham, we weren't allowed any annual leave because of the miners' dispute. And the first time I got some, I'd got about 8 months service, and it was October 84, and I booked 4 weeks at Be'eri. I went back to Be'eri again. Sadly, how rude of me! I never asked if I could go back again. I just turned up.
Well, they knew you so well, you could actually do that. You didn't have to go through the agency or anything.
Yes. Yeah, but after one of the kibbutzniks, Jacko, his name was Yaakov Ben Yaakov, who passed away some years ago. He came up to me after a week. I was just lying in the sunshine drinking Gold Star, and he said, Nick, I think maybe you ought to do some work if you're going to stay here for a while.
But you hadn't gone through the agency though, so
no, so kind, so nice. Yeah. And I did the remaining 3 weeks on the dishwasher. Right. And I was, as I said to you before when we met in Devon, I was probably the only serving British police officer working a dishwashing machine in a kibbutz.
I bet you were. Yes. So how many times have you visited Israel altogether? I believe you've taken your family with you, and what's your impressions of Israel as a whole?
Well, in 78, I know you first went there in 83, didn't you?
Yes.
In 78, there were no high-rise buildings, no glass and steel structures anywhere. It was very Middle Eastern, but now it's very European, with all the tall buildings in Tel Aviv and all the motorways and the train. You can actually get a train down into the Negev.
It's very efficient as well. Yeah,
unbelievable. There was none of that in 78, obviously, but I don't think it's lost any of its character. It's still Israel, isn't it? And we all know what Israel is like.
Yes, and when you sorry,
if you haven't been, you should go. That's my
you should go. Yes, a lot of people keep saying to me, "Oh, I must go," and I always say, don't wait till it's too late. Go now. You know, what's the song? Enjoy yourself. It's later than you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think also, as soon as you arrive, there is this smell, this aroma of like the heat and the trees and the sea.
Absolutely.
Which is quite unique. Yes.
Yeah. I remember in 2013 when I took my son Johnathan, he was 18.
The same age that you were when you first went. Yes.
And it's not lost its magic, because we were stood on a street corner. I thought I knew my way around Tel Aviv, but it had changed so much. We stood on a street corner in Tel Aviv with a map, and within 10 seconds, somebody was tapping us on the shoulder saying, do you want some help? Are you okay?
Yes.
And I thought, well, this is amazing. I mean, I said to you before that the first time I was in Israel, I'd never heard the word bavakasha until I left.
Yes.
but that's not an issue. I mean, it's just 10 seconds and somebody was helping us out.
Yeah.
And we found it was amazing.
It's I think it's also in the translation a lot, because it's a language of abbreviations. So
Yeah,
you don't have to say certain words that you would have to say in English, otherwise it would
yeah,
sound impolite.
yeah,
And I think that goes on, and they don't say please, or they do say thank you. They say Toda Latha,
yeah.
Toda
So
Rabah.
that,
I've got that, yes, but not so many pleases. It's just I
yeah,
want, yes, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But now you haven't spent your whole life visiting Israel as much as I suspect you probably would like to. And you've taken up careers, as you've just mentioned, in the police force and also aviation. Is that you had a career in aviation or an interest in
No,
aviation?
the education, like my writing, was sort of like a hobby, really. I did some flying with the Air Cadets in 1976. I got a glider pilot wings in 76 with them. Then a couple of years later, I got my private pilot's license. But I gave up in 94 because a family arrived and pressures of work and finances
Of
and so on. But
course,
I
yes.
really
Yeah.
took it again last year after 30
Mhm.
years.
Mhm.
My license back, and I did a night rating in January. And so it's great. It's fantastic.
Right. I'm you one of your books is about the police force, isn't it? Because I've downloaded it, I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But one of
Right.
them is about the police force.
Yeah. Yeah. Who'd be a copper
That's
is
right.
yeah. It's quite critical of police management and the Home Office. But I wrote a book before that called Hospital Beats. That was my first book, and that was about the success of working with a hospital security company at the Nottingham City Hospital, because
Right.
there was a lot of crime, and I worked with them, and we had a lot of success.
Mhm.
But sadly, it didn't go down very well with the police because there were things in it that they didn't like, and
Right.
I had problems with them. But I just about kept my job anyway to finish and retire.
Yes, it sounds a bit controversial, but that's what sells books. Um,
Yes,
uh, I'll give you a free plug now because Kibbutz Virgin is not the only book you've written. Just briefly, what other books have you had published?
well, I've had a book about an old fella who was in Africa in 1952. That was his story. I
Mhm.
ghost wrote for him. That's the tragic romance of Africa. That's a true story. And also, I've written a goalkeeper's autobiography for him. That's about the goalkeeper Steve Cherry. But my latest two books are about aviation. Kitty Hawk Down is about a chap, true story about a chap who crashed in the Egyptian desert in 1942, and his aeroplane was found in 2012. And my latest book is a similar thing, but it's the German side of World War II in the Eastern Front, and that's called Vermisst, which means missing in German. And that was quite difficult to try and portray a German pilot in Russia with some sympathy, because he obviously shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah.
But it was a similar thing to I like the sort of naive um, coming of age type stories, and they were all in Germany and in the RAF. They were recruited young
Right.
and told a pack of lies, and he ended up in Russia.
And
But
this is because the reader, the mature reader, can see into the fact that these are young people
yeah,
being manipulated, and they know, and it's sort of like I know more than I know what's going to happen next.
yeah.
Reading
I,
it.
I was astonished at when I researched the German pilot book, Vermisst. I was astonished that the German people were told so many lies. At Dunkirk, they were told the British and French were about to invade Germany, which is obviously nonsense. And they were told that the Russians were poised to invade Germany in 1941, and the Germans were forced to invade Russia to protect themselves. And of course, they only had the state media. And there are parallels with Putin's Russia, where the Russians are told all sorts of lies, and it's a warning. It's another warning from history that if governments tell their people too many lies, they will believe them, won't they?
Yeah. But it was Goebbels who said, the bigger the lie, the more people will believe it.
That's right.
But I have, as you can see, got a copy of your book right here.
Yes, yes.
Just going back, just in case anybody missed it, it's the diary of when you first went to Israel on a kibbutz in 1978, when you were just 18. And you had no idea, I think you never even heard the word kibbutz or knew much about Israel. And I think you were going to go with a cousin, you said, but then you didn't. You went on your own.
Yeah, he told me about it. So let's go to Israel. And I said, yeah, okay. And he sort of started arranging it. And then at the last minute, he went to university instead. And I thought, well, I'll still go on my own. I got an El Al flight to Tel Aviv, and then the 357 bus, Egged bus.
You remember the number?
I think, and up to Kiryat Shimona. I remember passing Tiberias and thinking, what am I doing going further away from this place? This is beautiful.
Yes,
and I ended up on Daphne on the border, with just north of Kiryat Shimona. Yeah. And of course, just after Christmas '78, we spent a lot of time in the air raid shelters, the Miklat, because the PA sending rockets over and all this one. And it's when you're attacked in that way, when you're in an air raid, there's a sudden personal issue about it. These people who I don't know over the border are trying to kill me, and I got quite, in my naivety, I thought, why are they trying to kill me? I've not upset them. Why are they doing this?
Yes.
And it was all that's how I thought as an 18-year-old. And it was quite something to be having to run into the air raid.
When I presume you were writing back home to your parents. Did they know all about this? They must have been rather alarmed at hearing you're in an air raid shelter.
Yes, I think they were. And on reflection, I think they did ask me to go home. But
I'm not surprised. Yes.
I never felt unsafe.
Right. I was going to say that when you flew El Al, that may well have been an experience on its own before you'd even arrived in the country. Was that
absolutely. So? Yeah. I remember as soon as the aeroplane touched down, everybody started cheering and clapping.
Right.
And that doesn't happen when you go to Spain or France or anywhere like.
Well, Johnathan, thank you very, very much for this. I've recommended your book. I've scored it 10 out of 10.
Oh, thank you very much.
Because it's an extremely interesting read. And thank you for doing this interview.
It's not a problem. Anytime, Mike.
All right. And no doubt we may well meet up again in Devon sometime.
Yes,
Next
absolutely.
time you're here. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.